Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the June Power Hour on Conferencing and Collaboration, brought to you today by our series sponsors, Blue Jeans, and our webinar sponsor, Samsung. This webinar has been approved for one of the following RUs for this live event. We have CTS, CTSD, and CTSI credits available. Please allow 5 to 7 business days for the RUs to appear on your transcript. If you do have any questions, please email webinars@avixa.org. Today's webinar will be approximately 45 to 60 minutes in length. Audience questions will be addressed by the panel during the webinar and as well as at the conclusion. Please enter your questions into the Q&A window, which can be found by clicking the Q&A icon. Please do not enter your questions into the chat window as those tend to get lost. If you've missed one of our previous Conferencing and Collaboration Power Hours and you wish you hadn't, please visit avixa.org/training session, and you can find all of the previous webinars listed there. Today's webinar will be available online at the same link in 5 business days, and no RUs are available for watching a recorded webinar. Today's panel will be moderated by Peter Koman, CTO of PTS, MB, who's a product manager by our sponsor, Blue Jeans by Verizon, Michael Smith, head of Global Strategic Alliances of the Display Division of Samsung, and Ed Macy McLeod, he's the head of Smart Workplace Strategy and Design from PTS, and as well, George Kaler, Interior Studio Leader at Corgan. And now I will turn it over to Pete to kick us off. Thanks, Pete.
G'day everyone, Pete Techman Coman here for another AVIXA Conferencing and Collaboration Power Hour, proudly sponsored by Samsung and Blue Jeans by Verizon. It's a mouthful. On today's webinar, we're going to be discussing facilitating collaboration for remote workers. And to help me do this is a very esteemed panel headed up by George Kaler from Corgan Architects. George is based in New York. We also have Michael P. Smith, who's a general manager at Samsung Electronics. MB, and I'm not even going to try to pronounce your name correctly, MB, because I will do you a total disservice, so I apologize in advance. But we are glad that you are on the webinar today. We appreciate that, and you're the product leader at Blue Jeans. And then finally, we have Ed Macy McLeod from PTS, People Technology Space, who is also based in New York City. So without further ado, let's get into it. George, my first question is for you. You're the studio leader at Corgan. So as an interior designer, I'd love to get your perspective on what you believe why you believe collaboration is important.
Thanks very much, Pete, and thanks for the intros there. Yeah, I mean, this is a fantastic conversation topic to be part of, and really, it's so important from my side as a designer to try and make sure that everyone doesn't forget the importance of collaboration fundamentally. And why it's so important to firms. I mean, for me, I'm in a creative and dynamic industry of workplace design. It's highly important for me to be able to fluidly collaborate with my team face-to-face and more and more so digitally. And we know, the best and most innovative ideas are not created in a vacuum. Really, it's all about getting the most diverse teams together to create the best ideas. So, this is what we've been talking about for decades now. And, some of the biggest, most innovative firms have been talking about the competitive advantage, the business benefits of collaboration, and really, what that successful collaboration brings in terms of efficiency, quality of work, innovation, employee engagement, growth and profitability. And really, this has not changed. No matter what's happened with the pandemic, I think fundamentally that hasn't changed.
It's interesting. A lot has changed, obviously, in the last 12 to 15 months, but it's amazing how we've all kind of adapted, really, in some form or another.
Yeah, exactly. And I think as we've been apart, I think more and more we're understanding that face-to-face collaboration really is fostering trust and bringing people together. So, it's going to be really interesting to see how that might change, our thoughts on that as we get back to the office.
Yep, exactly. And MB, I mean, we would all have to agree that 2020 was a year that most of us would rather put behind us. So what will collaboration look like in 2021 and moving forward?
Great question. First of all, good afternoon, everyone. Such a pleasure to be part of this panel today. Being part of Blue Jeans by Verizon, I think we have a special perspective on the collaboration itself, being in the space. For over 10 years now, we were the pioneers in the interoperable collaboration and video conferencing. We've been talking to lots of customers during the pandemic, the way they have adopted to remote first culture during 2020 and how they're kind of changing their strategy as we all are kind of coming back to the office now. So before the pandemic, we all know it was mostly like in-office collaboration. The devices, the technology tools were built to facilitate collaboration in the office. During the pandemic, it was like a major shift in how people worked. Everyone was mostly remote. Again, the tools and the technologies had to change their perspective or the goal that they wanted to address for the people. It was about remote workforce. Everyone was in front of their laptop, mobile devices, working from home, connecting to their network in the home, the Wi-Fi network, and so on. So the technology that everyone used for collaboration was changing. And now, in 2021, it's about hybrid. We all are learning as we go, but the initial trends are clearly suggesting that most of the employers are preferring to go hybrid, which means some of their workforce will be remote. Some of them prefer to come to office, and it's about providing flexible work opportunity for people to choose from. Like, do you want to be at home? Do you want to be in office? Do you want to choose when to come to office, and so on? So it's about flexible hybrid work model that people are going to adopt in 2021. And that's what our internal research suggests. And some of the reports that we read in the public domain also suggest that it's all about providing flexibility to employees when it comes to collaboration and work.
And I think it's a really good opportunity for organizations to really reimagine their workplace and sort of make a fresh start and make changes. A reimagined workplace. In your opinion, what does a reimagined workplace look like?
Well, frankly, in the last 10 months, we've seen about 10 years of innovation in the electronic space. It's been rapidly accelerated. So, when we talk from the perspective of Samsung, frankly, we had to use a lot of components that were there in the software world and in the hardware world and try to figure out the best way to bring them together with as minimal friction as we possibly could. I think when we talk about the reimagined workplace, it's how do we manage the transition from the home office to the office space? How do we keep the consistency of the experience? We've all grown very accustomed to this remote way of working as a matter of function and habit. Now the question becomes, on all the devices that we've been taking with us, how do they interact in as frictionless way as possible? So, when we look at the office reimagined in the workplace of how it's going to look in the future, we have to consider the devices that are walking in that office and how they wake up to see one another. So we talk a lot about the transition of a mobile device to a desk, to a office huddle space. And the one thing I think that is key or consistent is people have an expectation of what that experience should be like. And it doesn't matter the device that the person has. It doesn't matter the office environment they're in. That expectation of a similar user experience, the connectivity, is a consistent function. So when we talk to our clients about the office reimagined, what they want to replicate is the experience they have today in a functional way that adds value. So we're talking about synergy and devices. When you walk into a conference room, the conference room wakes up automatically. It recognizes who you are, and you're instantly in that meeting. It's not like you're fumbling for a passcode at that stage. You're not trying to, log on. As long as you have a mobile device with you, it becomes the key, talks to the display, the room wakes up. I think that's the new level of interoperability in the Office Reimagined we're really looking at Samsung and our partners on display and mobile, is the fact that it should be a frictionless environment, and the tools should automatically work together, regardless of the device you're bringing in.
Yeah, totally agree with that. I mean, I know in our line of work, designing these kinds of spaces from a technology point of view, that's our number one thing that we're trying to eliminate is friction. I mean, it always drives people crazy. And one of the trends that we're seeing to try and help remove friction, amongst other things, bring your own. So we're seeing a lot of some sort of UCC platform call. Instead, they're requiring the users to bring their own laptop. So, as I said, one, to help try and reduce the friction because it's their own personal device, whether it is a laptop or their phone or a tablet, whatever, but bringing your own meeting to the room and utilizing that infrastructure within that space to collaborate.
Yeah, I mean, we actually coined it as hot desking. The fact that, the office environment is going to change, definitely is a matter of what we've seen in 2020. The fact that you need to walk into that desk, be able to kick off a meeting live, have a dock and a, monitor and device that are synchronous is really huge. It's a game changer, in my opinion.
Yep. No, I totally agree. And George, just on that, I mean, if we are using our own personal devices or our own allocated devices to run these meetings, are we going to see less meeting spaces because instead of taking these calls from our desk rather than in a meeting room? And what other different types of collaboration spaces the organizations that you're dealing with, what are they looking for? What do they need to cater for?
Yeah, that's a really interesting point. I mean, I think there's fundamentally different types of collaboration that people need to have in work, informal and formal collaboration, and all the nuances in between. And people are doing both on their day-to-day jobs. Some are working more successfully than others. I think, a lot of this informal collaboration, is happening each from our own personal devices with other people on their own personal devices. But when we have some more formal collaboration in meeting rooms with digital people, digital collaboration as well, other people dialing in, I think that's becoming a bit more challenging nowadays to make sure everyone has the same parity and quality of experience on those calls. But in terms of in-office collaboration, what are we designing in the office, in the workplace now, post-pandemic? I think, Michael talked about, how the pandemic's been an acceleration and an accelerator to, a lot of the communication trends that were happening before the pandemic. And I think what we're finding is, that now that we know everyone can work from home, there is going to be a larger percentage of remote workers. So when people come into the office, really these collaboration spaces and any workspaces need to work much harder and much more efficiently for them. So I think, if we have less people in, less seats within the office, people are going to be collaborating more when they come to the office. That's why they're coming in. They're coming to see people and collaborate face to face. So we're designing a higher percentage of collaboration spaces versus primary work seats, for example. So we can, an office of a smaller footprint can maybe support a larger head count. But certainly when people are in the office, they're going to be collaborating a lot more. So that, a large proportion of our daily calls as well are going to be using video with multiple users. So, any phone calls that I'm on nowadays aren't phone calls anymore, right? They're video conferencing from my desk. I'm going to be collaborating in an open office area with people face to face, but there's going to be someone on connecting digitally as well. So digital collaboration needs to be able to happen as well in the open office, and then the more formal forms of collaboration in a specific meeting room that needs to happen. So this is all this hybrid collaboration that we're talking about now.
So Ed, I mean, George just touched on technology and the role that technology is going to play in relation to collaboration, but in particular, remote collaboration. I mean, what are some of the benefits and downsides to remote collaboration, and how can we combat those?
Your audio's sort of wading in and out, but I think that you were addressing a question to me there. So, and it possibly was just touching on George's consideration there that we're going to have a lot of remote collaboration, and then we're going to have video calls with remote users. I think that's fantastic if those are video calls. So we've just got to think about who we're excluding when we move away from face-to-face collaboration. And if we have calls that the remote participants decide not to turn their video camera on, are they then stopping, are they preventing other people within the call, within the room, from maybe reading their lips or maybe reading their body language? When I was younger, I was told never to sit on one side of the kitchen table when we were eating dinner because there was a mirror right in front, and I was too distracted during the meal because I was constantly looking at myself in the mirror. For the last year and a half, I've been on so many video calls where I'm looking at myself constantly. I'm looking at a mirror image of myself. That's sort of alien to me. So there's lots of things that we're introducing through this remote collaboration through video conferencing that can have downfalls to those people who might exclude. But then we also have other forms of remote collaborations. We have tools. I think we've all probably adopted the ability to all comment and work on a Word document at the same time. If our companies weren't rolling that out pre-pandemic, then they were forced to, and that's been fantastic. We're not sending around lots of iterations of the same Word document, and that extends to PowerPoint and spreadsheets and Google Sheets and UI design, and I can't do it with code yet, but how does commenting work then? Is that like red notes from a teacher on someone's document? Are we doing synchronous or asynchronous collaboration? Are we all going to get on the document at the same time? We're all going to be on a video call at the same time so we can see each other and we can understand that someone's comment about our particular language there on that slide isn't as horrendous as we thought it might be.
George, what are your thoughts on that? I mean, being an architecture studio, I mean, that must make it incredibly difficult to collaborate remotely. I mean, I'm sure you guys probably all gather around a table, you have meetings and discussions and ideas and workshops and those kinds of things. With a lot of people working remotely, how does that happen? And what are the benefits, if any, or what are the downsides to remote collaboration?
Well, I mean, there is upsides and downsides. I think, we're experiencing a lot of the downsides, but I think there's a lot the upsides that we can benefit from if technology can really support that. But I think on one of the upsides, we can bring big teams together almost instantaneously. We can connect with our clients, to get a CEO, a CFO, a COO in the room at the same time can take weeks or months or could actually maybe never happen. And with digital collaboration, we can get people into a space together to collaborate pretty quickly, right? There's some fantastic software out there that allows us at Corgan to communicate digitally with some of our clients. Essentially, large whiteboards that everyone can just remote into just by clicking on a web page. They don't need to have passwords and things to get into this. And we understand working with large finance organizations, for example, that firewalls and things like that can really be inhibitive. But and some communication software as well obviously has whiteboards where people can communicate together, but we're using a particular platform that really does allow us to do that. We can put in presentations, we can ask people to pull post-it notes and make comments on things and really have an interactive workshop. We can even have kind of a live tech support on there where if people are having an issue, we can communicate with them. So as part of workplace design, we're doing visioning sessions to really understand a client's values, mission statements, things like that. So we can have these these types of sessions successfully with our clients digitally. I think one of the downsides, that was mentioned, this parity in the shared experience. How can we make sure that everyone is having the same level of quality of experience when some people are in a room together and some aren't? And I got to say that is one of the challenges at the moment that we're facing, where we don't have that same level of quality, and we're hoping that a lot of the technology is going to help to alleviate that and make sure that everyone does have a good experience. That Ed just mentioned there some of the things that we're all going through in terms of struggling with these new ways of communication. We know that there is fatigue based around having these intense video conferencing calls all the time. We're trying to overcompensate with how we're talking and how we're communicating to really try and get our point across, because we can't read how we're communicating or people are reacting in their facial expressions. We know that there's been a study released recently that that fatigue is worse in women than men, and exacerbating sort of gender dynamics that may happen in the office in generally. So lots of people are affected by these things on a daily basis. And one other thing, if I just mentioned, that I think is really critically important that we have not had over this last 15 months is in mentorship and leadership. Mentorship is not just about touching base with someone on a digital call and seeing how they're getting on, asking them if they've got any issues. It's really about allowing, understanding how people deal with things on a day-to-day basis, sitting next to someone, being a mentor and mentoring the people that are coming into an organization really has, a huge gap at the moment. And I think that's something that we're going to realize has been happening, and something that we can only deal with when we get back to the office face to face.
Look, I couldn't agree with you more, George. I mean, that's one thing that I think a lot of people overlook is that mentorship and the next generation of workers coming through. That's how most of us learn. Most of us learn from having others, experienced people, knowledgeable people showing us, being very, very hands-on. And I worry about the fact if we focus, when I say we as an industry, focus on ourselves and just say, I'm more productive when I work from home, we are going to have this skills gap moving forward, because really we need to be giving back. We need to be mentoring the next generation coming through. I just, as I said, I think it's something that's quite often overlooked, and I think that we really need to focus on that a lot more. And part of that is bringing people back to the office, because yes, we can use these tools and technologies to communicate and collaborate, but most of the time, it's not the same. It's not the same as being hands-on and being next to somebody there showing you. Just out of curiosity, you mentioned some tools that you use for your collaboration. What tools would they be?
We're using Mural, which is a website where essentially, anyone can join, and we can set out whole work sessions, and people can literally join in. They can post digital post-its. Write their ideas down. We can organize things, and the whole session can be recorded, and then instantly that whiteboard after the session can be shared. So it's a really efficient way of communicating digitally, and it can be done for creative work sessions, and for more technical work sessions as well.
Yeah, we've used that a number of times with various design firms, and it works really well. I think it's a great collaboration tool. MB, over to you. I mean, how do we keep in touch with our employees, with everyone working remotely? I mean, are people slacking off? How do we, like George said, I mean, it's important that, that we need to, think about their well-being. How do we engage with them? How do we make them feel included in conversations and part of the team? So, what tools can these organizations leverage to assist in that process?
Yeah, good and very relevant question in this time when people are planning to go back to the office. As you rightly said, it's not about productivity. The leaders in the enterprise are not worried about productivity. Most of the research show that the productivity has not dropped when people started working remotely, but it's about their well-being. right? The leaders are concerned about well-being of their employees, and employees are concerned about, they feel they're exhausted, they're overworked, the concerns about work-life balance, and so on. So if we actually talk about three different personas when it comes to collaboration, one is the workforce, the people or the employee. The problem they have is it's not just about collaboration, it's about like the network that they could build when they were in the office, and also sense of being connected to the vision itself, and also being motivated. The second persona here is the leaders or the executives. Their concern, it's not just about the business goals, it's also about keeping employees engaged, their well-being, their happiness, and it's a long-term thing, right? It's not just about 12 months where, okay, the remote work has worked and forever we're going to be like this, right? And the third persona, and the important persona, is the facilitators. When I say facilitators, these are the IT admins or the people who actually enable this collaboration by procuring the right tools, making the right tools available, the networks, devices, and so on. So from all these three personas point of view, it's important to be connected. It's important to have like frequent sessions, be it like town halls, all hands, internal employee engagement type of events, where executives can share their ideas, views, and also sense the pulse of the employees. Like, how are they feeling? Are they able to connect to the vision? Like things like that. So for these reasons, it's important for the leaders to pick the tools which they can use on a frequent basis to connect with their employees, assess the level of engagement, maybe the happiness quotient in the employee base itself, and also efficiently deliver the message, be it on-premise, because when we talk about hybrid, some of the people are going to be on-premise, some are going to be remote, the workforce is going to be spread across the globe, right? So for considering all these factors, it's important to choose the right tools for their internal collaboration and communication, and also think about the devices that people would be using and the network setup that each of these employees will have in the various places that they work from.
And on Ed, I mean, MB just spoke about various tools to help facilitate remote collaboration, but what I would like to know is, if an organization doesn't currently have these platforms in place, who's the best person to lead that conversation, and what stakeholders need to be involved?
Yeah, so great questions. A lot of organizations are struggling with who is best to lead that charge, because you need to involve quite a few departments. Can that just be an IT-led solution? Can it be top-down from the management without the involvement of the IT department? There's a lot to support there. There are then ramifications and repercussions that we're not necessarily thinking about right now. So data exfiltration, for example. Do we have shredders at home? Does everyone have their computer supported by UPS at home? What are we doing about network connectivity at home? At what point does audio drop out, or people not having their cameras on become intolerable? At what point does taking a call outside from a backyard or whilst en route somewhere, when does that become something that an organisation won't accept? Who leads that conversation? That's a lot of stakeholders need to be part of that, and then actually the users themselves need to be involved. There might be a great number of users who don't want to work hybridly. They want to come in. But what keeps on being surfaced is the idea of those with the loudest voices who are at a life stage where they enjoy working from home. Maybe they've got a young family and it suits them. We're not talking about the youngsters who are just coming into the workforce, who've spent their college years and before that working sort of off their laptops in their bedrooms, in the library. They've been working this sort of hybrid role. When are they going to sit down in an office and enjoy working in office? Are they longing for that?
Yeah, and there's some interesting questions, and unfortunately, it's quite often those conversations seem to slip through the gaps. So I think that's the challenge. Like, is an external party from the organization or someone within the organization that needs to bring all these people together? Well, what are you seeing?
Definitely, an outside organization is to facilitate those conversations, just because they're having that same conversation with a number of different organizations, and then they can bring to bear that wider knowledge.
Yeah. No, that's a good point. Yeah, leveraging some of the other, seeing what other organizations are doing and what works and what doesn't is always, it can also come in handy, right?
And also, a third party doesn't have any ulterior motive to make the conversation sway one way or the other. Not saying that an internal organizational group would, but there's no bias. There's no institutional knowledge that could necessarily cloud the judgment.
Yeah. No, it's interesting. And Michael, what are some key innovations around like audio visual systems, conferencing, and what new tools are we seeing that can be used that can leverage or improve the workflow process?
Well, one of the things I wanted to comment on and just kind of build on and what George was saying and Ed was saying is meeting fatigue on this platform, any platform, is very real. So, when we talk about improving that experience with technology, one of the key things we're looking at is how to eliminate fatigue, improve that workflow, make it easier for people to connect in a way that's more natural and more effective. So, some of the key innovations we've been focused on with a lot of our partners is the whole functionality of transcribe and translate. If your data is anything like mine, it's not uncommon to have 10 meetings in a day. And when you have 10 meetings in a day, I'm sure I'm speaking for a lot of us on this call, the hardest part is retention. And, the fatigue that you're going to have during that call and trying to get the nuggets of information that are actually relevant and important. So the platforms that we use a lot of times and integrate in Samsung, they all have transcribe and translate. So as I'm talking in real time, everything that I say is captured. Not only is it captured, but it can be translated into different languages. So working for an international company, working for a company that has multiple languages represented, I think those are some of the innovations that really reduce the friction, the fatigue, and improve the workflow. So that's one of the focus areas, I think, is, we got to be looking at the platform, how we need it to work and operate for us in that work environment is very key. Another thing I'm very big on, and Ed and George and MB touched on it, is it's that real-time collaboration. That sometimes collaboration is not real-time, it can be asynchronous. We're talking about a dynamic whiteboarding experience on a display using a software platform. I think one of the greatest things about the workflow is it doesn't have to be real time. Anything that you do in a meeting, depending on the platform you are using, can be accessed by someone at a different time zone and collaborated. Anything you do can be captured. So to me, in some regards, that eliminates the fatigue because it's knowing that the materials are there for you to operate on and collaborate on at any time. The other thing I want to talk about is the social element. It's kind of missing. I would be, frankly wrong if I didn't say I miss the office and I don't miss the camaraderie and the socialization. But what I've found is a very good surrogate for that is using Teams platforms. Collaboration team spaces where I can chat to any one of my work colleagues. I can share information. Most of it is work related. Some of it is not. Of course, we have to be cautious on the things that are not work related. But I find that helps me keep me connected when I'm not in the office. So I find a couple of things, for workflow. It's the transcribe, the translate. Anything I do in a meeting space can be captured in real time or used asynchronously. And then it's the Teams platforms that allow me to interact with folks kind of informally. Those are the things that I think really drive next generation working. And I think those will be consistent, whether you're in the office or you're working remote. That becomes a new expectation of communication. And that's really what I see is driving innovation and leveraging and improving the workflows that we have.
I must say, we're dealing with, we use online collaboration whiteboards, and it's great because, you know, we'll have someone who might be in Sydney and someone that's over in the UK, and like you said, we can work on it in our time. We, you know, wake up in the morning, we open it up, and someone's been working on it whilst we've been sleeping. You can see that, so it doesn't have to be in real time. So yeah, so those kinds of tools are very important. But George, from your perspective, what role does technology play in collaboration, especially when it comes to incorporating these remote workers? I know your focus is a lot on the physical space, but how does the technology play into your designs when you're dealing with your clients?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question, and you know, just to go back on what, you know, the last couple of questions were, you know, and I'm really going to stick my neck out here because every one of you guys is from the technology side, but really the technology follows the need. You know, we are, you know, could organizations ever think that overnight they could send their entire organization home to work from home? It would take millions and millions of dollars to get everyone the right device to be able to do that, and months and months and months of planning. But in the end, we did it, and you know, largely successfully, and the technology was able to deal with that. And I think one of you guys said at the start, just you know, the last 10 months has been like 10 years of technology evolution. So I think you know, and technology follows that need. But I think what we really need to be aware of when we're designing workspaces is how technology can support and not dictate. So really, we need to be really aware of designing collaboration spaces around the type of communication and collaboration that is required, not around the technology. You know, we need to understand and be able to foster that behavior for our clients. For me, the most enjoyable part of my work is really understanding the essence of a company, what they do, and understanding their corporate culture and how we can support their culture and collaboration. So, you know, creating successful collaboration, communication, and technology that is supporting and not dictating, I think, is really important. LED screens are becoming more and more dominant in a room. It's really shaping the room and the conversation. You know, we're all facing this digital screen on the wall, and you know, that's limiting some of the fundamental ways that we used to communicate. You know, with storytelling, getting it around, being able to share ideas. So, you know, we're really starting to think about that. There is some furniture and technology tools that are integrated, you know, where people can stand up around a specifically shaped table with a screen right next to you, so that the screen is almost like a person in the conversation. So I think that's some of the nuances behind designing with technology that we really need to do now. We know we've got the technology there, but how can we really shape that technology to support and not dictate the office spaces that we're designing?
So you say technology shouldn't lead. What if we flip that around and we look at it? I think we've all been in spaces where the design of the space has led and the technology has suffered as a result. So is there a balance between the two?
Yeah, definitely. It is all about a balance. But again, you know, we really do need to make sure that fundamentally we are, you know, the technology is supporting the activity that is happening within that space. You know, my laptop with my earpiece is fantastic. You know, with an integrated camera, it sits on my desk. I can have my sit-stand desk up, and I can communicate for certain types of calls in that way. It works really, really well. But when I'm in a meeting room, you know, and there's 5 other people in the room, and then there's going to be 5 other people on a screen, and we're trying to have a creative session. How is the technology supporting that when we're all looking towards one screen or wall? So it's kind of the top technology starts to dictate how people are communicating in that room. Gotcha.
And Ed, when we're talking about these remote workers and we're trying to collaborate remotely, I mean, what are some of the minimum technology requirements that a remote user needs to ensure so we have a quality user experience? And if there is additional equipment required, who should be paying for this equipment?
Depends who's driving the requirement to work remotely. I would think is in terms of the cost, in terms of minimum requirements to support your experience. You've got to think not just about your experience, but about the end users, the other people on the call's experience. So, as I said previously, if the platform you're using doesn't have that transcription facility, and I want people to be able to read what I'm saying because maybe they're hard of hearing, then I need to have my camera on. So then I need to have broadband that supports the ability to have a camera on. I need to be able to have the broadband to be able to receive everyone else's video streams in. I need to be in an environment that's not too echoey. I need to have microphone and lighting that makes the end user's experience of looking at me something that's not frustrating. And George, in terms of that technology supporting the and not dictating, I'm in total agreement with you. And I think that's where Imagineering sessions are ever so useful, because I'm sure that Michael and MB can both talk about aspects of their technology platforms that would completely facilitate in-person and remote collaborators on a whiteboard where you're marking it up with a digital felt tip pen, and at the same time the remote users are also marking up on their screen, and that's appearing in real time for everybody. So by being led by the activity, what do we want to achieve in that space? The technology can most definitely support us. We've got to think about what we want to achieve in the space, and then start to describe the technology. And I don't mean to sound too sort of down about technology in this whole conversation, because I'm a technology consultant. But I am ever so fearful. All the more I read about the studies showing who gets left behind by the ability to have hybrid working. I don't want us to think that remote working and remote collaboration means that certain people we let them be part of our organization, and they always work from home, and we don't need to cut them to come into the office, so we don't need to make any allowances for them. But then they're left out for promotions. They're left out of the sidebar conversations that we have. So the bit that I'm wanting technology to, where I want technology to move us, is how do we prevent that exclusion from happening? How do we what's the next evolution of technology in the workplace, so that we're not just talking about digital whiteboarding that's analog to digital to analog at the same time. And that's where I think that organizations like Blue Jeans and Samsung need to step up and show us your future R&D, to show us what you're thinking about, how to bridge those gaps.
Yeah, so MB, what technology? I mean, we're seeing a lot more user or consumer-centric technologies that are being used. I mean, we're using a lot of our mobile devices, so we're able to join calls from our phone, and we've never been so connected than right now, right? So we have really no excuses to be to jump on these calls and collaborate with each other. So what does conferencing and collaboration look like moving forward?
Well, I'd like to weigh in on what George was saying about, the role of technology and how we can, I'm trying to find the word, because George said it much more eloquently than I did, and so did Ed.
It was just his accent, Michael. Don't be fooled.
Yeah, so I mean, it is. It works. I wish I had one of those. One of the things I was just thinking about is we're working a lot with wearables. Mm-hmm. And that really hasn't entered into the picture yet. We've been talking about displays and interactive displays. We've been talking about mobility, mobile devices and how those things connect together. But another thing is, if you've got a wearable device, it can monitor your oxygen, it can monitor your pulse. We type that in with IoT, sensormatics in a conference room, to talk about temperature control, level of oxygen in a room. Those are things I think the future of AV conferencing, in enterprise spaces and a designed working space can consider, is physically monitoring the folks for their health, for their engagement. So it's not something you're going to see on a camera in a traditional audio video conferencing sense. It's more being connected to the sensormatics that are in that place of work or on your person. Detect, wait a second, I'm detecting a higher heart rate. His oxygen levels are not good. Her oxygen levels are not good. And imagine having an environment that would actually adapt. Or, as crazy it is, and as much as I'd like to say I'm a technology guy, I'm human too. Imagine your technology saying, wait a second, you need to step away for a moment. You need to take a little break, and then having the technology automatically suggest a break and allow you to recollect and take that needed respite from what you're doing. So I think one of the things we didn't talk about,
Michael. Yeah. Every time you wear Apple, if you wear an Apple Watch, every time it says breathe, that's the indication that you need to take a few seconds out and do some deep.
Exactly. So I just, from a technology perspective, I wanted to say that that's something we're very much in consideration of, is working with those codex partners such as BlueJeans and other folks to consider tying in other sensors and things that take into consideration the human being, because we're kind of missing that element. We're trying to replicate something that's very human, but the nuances of how someone feels you can't see on a camera. So talking about sensormatics, IoT, I think that's one of the ways we're going to innovate. And obviously all those devices that are connected into it are part of that.
Yeah,
agree more. Just to add on the video conferencing perspective around innovation, what we are thinking about now, we are mainly thinking about three problems. Most of the problems were expressed here. Just I would like to summarize. The first one is equitable collaboration. I would like to call it as, meaning equal footing regardless of where meeting attendees are located. The sense of second-class citizen that people might feel if they're just working remote and not able to come to office, right? So any innovation that can help people to feel connected and be part of the conversation, ability to kind of share their ideas, and also towards maybe in a meeting, right? So innovation around that, making people feel that they are part of the conversation. The second problem that we are solving when it comes to video conferencing is immersive collaboration. There were mention of whiteboarding. That's absolutely right. During the pandemic, we saw a huge surge in the adoption of whiteboarding because people wanted to collaborate, they wanted to share ideas, they wanted to learn together. It's not just about out-of-meeting collaboration, it's also about in-meeting collaboration. Can we bring those whiteboards where you have created your pitch or the flows into the meeting, and can people collaborate real time, like multiple participants collaborating on a single whiteboard? Can you save it, retrieve the whiteboard during the meeting, and so on? It's about immersive collaboration. And the third problem statement is about enabling ad hoc interaction, this water cooler conversation. So there are lots of innovation happening, not just from the devices standpoint, it also from software and tools standpoint, like how we can enable those ad hoc interactions, again, using the tools that people use every day.
Yeah, I agree. I know. I love Michael. I love those the comments around wearables. I really believe that well-being is kind of that next frontier. Is that that's something that we need to really tackle head on and ensure that our people are sort of being looked after, and technology can play a big role in that. And like you said, especially with the wearables and the technology that we have around us that can assist us in the well-being of all these people. So I think that's huge, and I think it's going to be a huge industry moving forward. Look, I'm conscious of time, and I want to make sure that we get to any questions that have come in from our viewers. So George, back to you. Some final thoughts. Very, very specific question. What do you think the future will look like?
Well, that's a pretty big question to ask me on a Monday, but the future looks great. But in terms of collaboration, unfortunately, people have been collaborating less, I think, during the pandemic. That's just literally because they haven't been together. Historically, people maybe spend an equal amount of time collaborating and doing heads down work, but there has been a lot of data out saying that we are collaborating less. So look, I think that also means that this less collaboration is correlating directly with profitability. And B mentioned productivity, maybe doing pretty well for a lot of people in their specific jobs, but it's become clear that really we need to get back to collaborating. We need to get back to innovating. We need to get back into the office, but also we can really harness the efficiency that can come out of the digital collaboration space, and really how technology can support that. I love what Michael said about Samsung's vision of having seamless technology between all these different spaces. I really want to see that. But when people are getting back to the office now, we're going to get back to even more innovation, even more creativity, and even more productivity through everything that the pandemic has accelerated over the last 15 months.
Wow. Yeah. Look, there's as I said before, it's an exciting time. I think there's a lot of opportunity for everybody, and there's some great thoughts and conversations there. I really appreciate everyone's time. I want to throw it back over to Lauren at AVIXA just to see if there's any questions that have come through from our audience.
Yes, hello. There have been a couple of questions that have come through. Let's go. There's been a lot about collaboration and as far as the Watercooler Talks. So where can you find tools for remote team morale, happy hour icebreakers, those water cooler moments of chit chat that we are missing in this new paradigm type of a thing? So where can we go to find those things?
I would like to look at that problem slightly differently. Yes, it's important to have the right tools to facilitate such type of conversation, but it's also about framing the conversation itself, or like setting up those conversations or the meetings itself. Like, can you set up like a weekly happy hour kind of a meeting on any platform that you use? It's about giving a platform for people to express, share ideas, and collaborate. There are tools available for sure, but it's not just about the tools, but how you approach such problem statements.
Yeah, I would agree with MB. One of the things I think is a challenge is when you try to do a happy hour, for example, and let's say it's the end of work. A lot of folks don't necessarily want to be part of a happy hour after they put in, a day of 7 or 8 meetings. So one of the things that's kind of interesting, and it's a good thing to do, is buy your team lunch. Buy your team lunch and do a remote lunch video platform and make it something where it's an actual break in their day. If you try to force chit chat or pander using this great technology, it comes off somewhat disingenuous. I would say if you can offer something that's a value, that's truly an escape, whether that be entertainment on a platform, yet people are engaged at the same time, that's an effective use of technology. I find that the happy hours and other forced events sometimes come out as contrite and not necessarily genuine. So, one of the things we suggest, for our workplace is why not have a team lunch where you buy your entire team lunch and you connect that way, and it's more natural and more easy. So that's one suggestion I would throw out there is buy your team lunch. You can still get on the platform and talk, but it's not a forced kind of thing. It's like they're getting something in return that's enjoyable, and entertainment as well on a platform sometimes works. So those are my suggestions for Watercooler for what it's worth.
Well, also, we talked about stakeholder engagement and where things are driven by. Stakeholder engagement doesn't always need to be from the top down, and it doesn't always need to be from the bottom up. It can be meshed. Vince, if you want to know what tools are needed, maybe you could just start a chat group using whichever tool you have, and just put something funny up there and see how your colleagues respond to that. The tools are there, but it's about how you want to interact, how you want your organization to allow you to interact, and just start putting some feelers out there to see what you can do, because it's no different from you having a conversation with a colleague, literally at the water cooler when you're both getting water. Just give someone a call or a little funny message. And Michael, when you were saying that you were exchanging messages like that was fresh for me. I'm not one for using emoticons and such. I had to learn that was the way to introduce tone into what I was saying, because previously I was using my body to convey, or my my sound to convey what I meant. So I needed to start using emoticons. That was a whole new thing that I needed to learn. Luckily, there are some search engines out there that you can just Google the question that you want answered, and there's always a good authority there out there telling you how you might achieve something.
And Ed, you know, to build on what we were talking about earlier, what I find is on the non-synchronous chats when I'm collaborating with other people, it's those emoticons, it's those funny images sometimes that I'll incorporate with serious messaging that keeps a connection. You know, and I think it's incredibly valuable and underlooked on these platforms is using those team spaces, using some of those images to add a little levity.
Yes, completely.
It's really key.
It's very hard to replicate that in-person contact, but like you say, those kinds of little tools that we have can make it help break the ice. Lauren, have we got any more questions there? We've got time for one more.
Yes, we have one more that has come in. So let's talk about how the increase in digital collaboration technology has been a benefit to the AV practitioner. What ways have we seen the benefits come through for the AV crowd?
Ed, have you got some thoughts on that?
Well, I think we're going to see that when we come back. So all of these remote tools that we've been using really quite successfully for a lot of us, we're now going to be utilizing those, but whilst we're also live in the space together, and then we're also having to deal with some hybrid workers. So for the AV practitioner, we're introducing a lot more AV tools, but we've progressed our AV tools to a point where there is some seamless interaction between them. So then it's not all sort of individually programmed, and these tools are meant to work with each other. And that's going to be a little bit of a shift for the AV integrators and consultants out there, that suddenly everybody understands how the AV should work, and will comment when it doesn't work. And that's, we need to be aware of that when we're delivering AV solutions for them. We've increased the bar for what people expect to be able to do. Digital whiteboard where I'm writing with a digital felt tip pen and other people are it's appearing for them. Every office will need to implement one of those now then.
Yep. Just to add on a couple of points. In summary, the market itself has expanded significantly, right? Like, I mean, if you're an AV practitioner, the size of the market before the pandemic, compare that to the size of the market today, it has increased multifold, which means the business is going to increase as people are going to come back to their office. The setup is going to look different. The devices people might use for collaboration might look different, which essentially means more work for AV practitioners. Not just that, it's also about innovation around how you deploy these tools and monitor and manage, right? So the innovation around that and adapting to those innovations will also be very key for the AV practitioners.
Great advice there. Unfortunately, that's all we've got time for on today's webinar. So a big thank you to George, to Michael, to MB, and to Ed. We really appreciate your time and your thoughts.